Mike Pendleton here with the On the Mic podcast, and I'm super excited today to bring you guys this interview because you're going to know the last name. It's a legendary last name. We are, I think, 24 hours away from the college football playoff. By the time this drops, college football playoffs will be upon us for the first time ever. The son of Joe Paterno. He is an author, speaker, former coach. The one and only Jay Paterno joins me today on the podcast. First and foremost, how are you, sir?
Doing great. How about you?
I'm doing fantastic. Obviously, a huge honor. We'll talk about your book as well. But like I said, this is first year college football playoff. Let me just jump right into it with this simple question. What went right for the college football playoff this year?
That's a question nobody seems to want to ask. Everybody's griping about Alabama should have been there. This should have been there. Somebody should have been seated there. Look, I think what went right is you're going to end up with 4 home games on 4 really incredible environment. Notre Dame on Friday, Penn State on Saturday, Texas and Ohio State. I mean, I've been to games in every one of those places. It gives you chills thinking about it. And for 3 of those 4 games, it gives you chills literally thinking about it because the weather is, for years, Big Ten teams have had to go down south for bowl games. And there's always been a little bit of a disadvantage. Not for us. We had great records in bowl games. But now, Tennessee's coming to Ohio State. SMU's coming to Penn State. A couple of weeks ago, Tennessee was at Georgia. It was 45 degrees, and their heated benches weren't working. And all the Tennessee guys were huddling on the benches at work. And I'm laughing, like 45 degrees. We wouldn't even have heated benches on the sidelines for a game like that. So it's going to be fun to see, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, as a Chicago native, I know those Midwest, November, December football games. They're tough for those who are not familiar with the weather. Now, obviously, yes, everyone's got a gripe with this, and I asked you what went right. But instead of asking you what went wrong, what do you think should be an area of focus to improve going into next year with the college football playoff?
Well, I think there'll be a lot of discussion about the seeding and the automatic buys for conference championships, conference champions, which I think that's warranted that maybe they get a buy, but I think it should be reseeded. Let's say that the seeding holds and you have Texas wins, Penn State wins, Ohio State wins, and Notre Dame wins. Ohio State really is probably the best team of that group in terms of talent and everything. And for Oregon to face them, while Penn State plays, even the rankings, Boise State and Arizona State are ranked behind Ohio State. So, the first and second seed should get those teams. And I'm not in any way implying those teams aren't as good. But right now, if I were in the playoff coaching, the one team I would not want to see, whether it's the first round or second round, is a very, very talented Ohio State team that's very angry. Angry, talented teams are scary. Oregon, I think, is another one that I'd be scared to see because I saw them live. I was at the Ohio State-Oregon game. But I think some of those things will be tweaked in year 2. I'd like to see it on a Saturday when they're not head-to-head with, like, Steelers-Ravens, for example.
Yeah.
I mean, you only have so many TVs and tablets and phones that you can have on at the same time. It might, when I get home from Penn State's game, I'll probably have 3 things working. So those things I think are all things we'll have to work out. And then I think it'll be interesting to see what happens in the next couple of rounds. Because if you're a fan, like say you're a Penn State fan, you got this game. If they win, they go to the Fiesta Bowl. If they win that, they go to, I think, the Orange Bowl. If they win that, they go to Atlanta. You start talking about a lot of cash to see all these games. Maybe 2 rounds at home games might be better. We'll see. It'll all get worked out.
Yeah, there's so much intrigue, and you kind of mentioned a gripe I've heard a lot of, like, why does Ohio State have to play Oregon if they beat Tennessee while Penn State maybe plays Boise State,
Right.
so on and so forth. But what is one upset that you think maybe it's not too crazy, but it'll get labeled an upset? I've got one. I would probably get crucified for saying it if I still lived in Chicago, and that's Indiana beating Notre Dame. But what's one upset that you think it should really be on watch in this opening round?
Well, I think both Texas and Penn State. I mean, Joel Klatt made a real good comment about Penn State and Texas. Say the best thing you can say about their resumes are the teams they lost to. And that's not to discredit, Illinois had a great year this year. Penn State beat them. Going to USC is never easy and win that. But when you look at it, I think SMU. What worries me as a Penn State fan is the talk of, oh, Penn State got an easy path. They've got SMU and Boise State. That's the SMU kids are hearing that. Their coaches are hearing it. They're going to come here. They've got a talented quarterback. For 3 quarters of that game, they dominated Clemson after they really got behind. They're dangerous, and that scares me. But that's the old coach in me coming out. I mean, I think if you said to me who's going to win the whole thing, I'm going to tell you in a very biased manner, Penn State. But that's a game that concerns me in terms of that. I think Indiana has something to prove, and they're going to play with something to prove. And they've, but I think those are the two that I think would jump out. And you never know. Davos, when he's been in this, he's been in this. This is not his first dog and pony show, and he may have them ready to get on Texas.
There were so many when this opportunity to interview was brought to me. I was like, wow, good thing there's a few talking points. Obviously, we have the college football playoff. One thing I really wanted to get your insight on, especially having been a coach, in the college football world, and it kind of leads into your book as well, right? Is two things. And we'll start off with the one major headline, which is Bill Belichick in North Carolina. And it almost seems, and maybe this is exactly about your book, but it almost seems like there's a shift in the world of football, not at college or pro specifically, but just football as a whole. To see a legendary NFL coach go to college. I know in Chicago, I'm wearing a Bears hat. People are saying, oh, Mike Vrabel. Now ESPN speculating maybe Mike Vrabel, if Ryan Day gets canned, maybe Mike Vrabel's a candidate for Ohio State. There are now very well tenured coaches in the NFL, more so looking at the college level than they are the pro level. Why do you think we're seeing such a seismic shift between college football and pro coaches?
Well, I think the reality is I think it's an opportunity. I mean, colleges right now are paying a lot more than they used to. That's number one. I think the pay. I was at Franco Harris's funeral 2 years ago, and just in talking to some guys with the Steelers, they're looking at the pro college contract, saying, I'm not sure we could pay that kind of money that some of these guys are paying. So I think that's one of the things. The other thing is, I think for a guy like Bill Belichick, if he goes to a place like North Carolina, there's unrestricted free agency every year. There's no salary cap. There are no rules in place. So there are a lot of inherent advantages a guy like Belichick can do. When you look at how Deion Sanders was able to get Colorado kind of on the map within 2 years and get to a 10-win season, you take a guy like Belichick, who's got that same attraction to kids that want to get to the NFL and has really has the pedigree of having coached all these Super Bowls. But you don't have a GM picking your team. Ultimately, the GM will report to the coach. You don't have an owner that's saying, well, I want you to draft this quarterback. It's all up to you. So you have so much more control at the college level than you do at the pro level. I mean, my dad was offered pro jobs over and over and over again. And one of the things he would always ask me was, who's picking my team? Who's going to pick the team and the players? If I want to draft somebody, and the answer was always, well, we have a GM and we have a scouting department. He said, that's all I need to hear. Plus, he just enjoyed the college game much more. And I think for a guy like Belichick, this may also be a passion project where he wants to go back and be involved in something really unique that college football is.
With your family lineage and history, obviously you say Penn State, you say the Paterno family, right? With Belichick signing what is technically a 5-year deal, there's opt-outs and all that, kind of more so a 3-year deal. What can Belichick, just as a coach and his legacy, bring to North Carolina that could kind of keep going, whether he's there or not, if his son takes over in the future?
Well, I think Mac Brown did a really good job in North Carolina. I want to be fair to Mac because I've known Mac a long time, and when he got there, really created some relevance there, and in some ways created some impatience and some expectations that probably were his own undoing. But what Belichick brings is another level of North Carolina telling people we're serious about football. We're not just a basketball school. We're going to make the kind of investment we want to make. I started out my coaching career at UVA. So, I was in that ACC. And we used to tell kids, go to North Carolina, college basketball is number one. NASCAR is number two. And if they get around to college football, you might be the third most important sport in that state. When you go out and hire a guy like Belichick, you're making a very concerted a statement and a very loud statement about what you want to do in terms of as it relates to your football program.
Well, we're going to talk about your book. The biggest things in college football today, NIL, and again, coming into this interview this week, it's all been transfer portal talk. When you have Belichick's, landing at North Carolina right as the portal, I mean, I haven't looked at the numbers yet, but I can't imagine the amount of people who are you're trying to get over to North Carolina. But it's not just about the arrival of Bill Belichick to college football. This transfer portal is really changing the game. I mean, I know there's speculation about Quinn Ewers and Arch Manning at Texas. Can you kind of talk about the impact the transfer portal has had?
Well, I think it's allowed basically an unrestricted labor market. So what you've created now, and I talk about this in the book, and it's one of the things that I think is probably not spoken about enough. You've created an industry of independent contractors. That's going to be one of the real challenges for not only coaches to how do you build a program. You can build a team for a year and be really, really good, but you got to build a program if you're going to be there over time. So how do you do that? How do you get all these people they have agents that are saying, if you don't jump in the portal in the first 2 days, it's like musical chairs. All the seats you want might be taken and the NIL deal money may dry up. So it's created these pressures. And one of the things that we talk about in the book is the mental health pressures on these student athletes. Some of them want to stay where they're at, but they've got an agent telling their families, well, I can get you X amount of dollars here and I can get you more playing time here. And why would you sit on the bench for 2 years when you can go here and play right away? And, it's created one of the things in the book is it says, it talks about impatient potential is dangerous because when you're impatient and you realize you have great potential, you make some decisions maybe you shouldn't make. So I think that's really one of the things that's changed college football is this complete uncertainty from day to day. And those are the challenges that the players have to face and the mental health aspects. Because again, it's make money in NIL, be great on the field or in the court or whatever sport you play. Oh, and by the way, you're supposed to go to school too. So all these things, and we want you to behave a certain way and deal with social media and all those other things. And the sport has become so professionalized. Schools are not doing a great job, and this is another one of the warnings that really comes out of the book, in preparing players for what comes with that perceived professionalization. Your fan base doesn't look at you as the 19-year-old kid playing an extracurricular activity sport for dear old state. They look at you and say, you're a pro, you threw 2 interceptions, you fumbled the ball, or you missed a tackle, and you're on social media asking me to retweet or give money to a collective, whatever it is. Well, guess what? I'm coming at you after you blew the game, especially when you talk about how much money people can now wager on games. There's anger right after the game. Sometimes they've had a few beers. So that's always been part of it. But that anger was generally aimed at coaches. Believe me, I know. As a guy who grew up in a house where the head coach had a listed phone number, and I had a listed phone number. So I mean, they could get to you. So that's one of the things that I think people aren't ready for, have not prepared players for.
We're talking in a sense of what the audience and fan base of college football, the fans of college football world should kind of know, right? I want to kind of bring it towards something with everything that we're talking about. You talked about impatient potential. I think there's a lot of also impatience in what the NIL is now, right? We just saw it at UNLV this year. Quarterback leaves halfway through the season because he was promised X amount of money. Coaches said they paid everything that they actually agreed to. And now that there's this ugly side of things. Obviously, we've seen it at the pro level, kind of arguments and bickering and not playing because of money. Not often, but it does happen. But at the college level, when you have these kind of, I'm going in a transfer portal, I'm done. But again, you're 19, 20 years old. What would you say to players? How would you caution players on how to approach going to a program, handling the money that they're, promised or agreed to and situations like that?
I think the most important thing for players and parents to understand is a couple of things. Number one, it's college football. So you are supposed to get an education. So, when you start thinking about schools you want to go to, think about the schools that have the things you want to major in. Because it doesn't matter how much NIL money you make now, how much you make in the pros, it ends at some time. And very few guys walk away from their NFL careers with the ability to say, I don't have to work another day in my life. And even if you have that kind of money, you want to be educated to the point where, hey, not only do I have enough money to live the rest of my life, what can I do to create more value, to do things beyond that? And that's how guys get in trouble. They have a lot of money, a lot of free time, and those things. So I think you want to go somewhere you can get the education you want. I think you want to go somewhere the idea of have in your mind, I'm okay with this level of NIL money. Okay, if it's maybe it's 50 grand, maybe it's 100 grand, maybe it's 300, whatever it may be, but say this is enough for me. This is all, so I can be happy with this, and I want to be at this school. And you know what? Go there and pick the school based on that, not by, well, I'm here at school A, but these guys promised me even more. Because generally you're not going to be happy if that's what it's all about. So I think you got to have some kind of grounded. It's no different than coaching contracts. If you're a head coach, be the school you want to be at. And stay put. Don't jump around all the time. But with players, there's so much impatience, and it's not. The greatest recruiting advice I ever gave somebody. It's not where you are when you start out. It's where you end up. So find a place that can get you where you want to be. I like seeing the stories of guys that went to a school, stuck it out, and then they're very successful, and having waited their turn, and they're happy. So, I think that's the most important thing is find a level of NIL that you're comfortable with that will make you happy. Don't always try and chase a few dollars more, because that's not the key to happiness, and find a place because, 3 days into your college career, you can get a career-ending injury. And if you're not at a school that you want to be at, and getting the kind of education you want, you're not going to be very happy.
That would be all for nothing. Let's start. We've been talking about all the topics around it. Blitzed, the all-out pressure of college football's new era. Your book, Jay Paterno, available on Amazon. Perfect for the holidays. Perfect for a college football playoff. Perfect for Penn State fans. Perfect for college football fans. Jay, what should readers and fans expect when they get this book?
Well, this is really going to be, I've spent a number of years consulting in NAL with a group that's working with schools all over the country. So I've seen some of the good things, and I've seen a lot of the bad things. And this book is what I call nonfiction fiction. It's a novel, but it's all based on real stories. And it's easier to make it a novel than write it as nonfiction, because then lawyers start coming in. You don't want to tick off guys I know in the profession who may or may not be involved in some of the stories and these things. So I think it's best that way. But this is a story that takes you from a head coach who's under tremendous pressure. And I said it at Ohio State, not because I'm trying to be direct, but just because it's a school that people are familiar with. And it takes you through the pressures that he feels. I'm on the board of trustees at Penn State. I've seen how trustees interact with football programs and the pressure they want to put on people. I've seen how donors say, well, hey, we paid for this kid in the collective and he's not playing. You either play him or you're out. There's all these things that go on, the pressures that the families feel, that mom and dad, or some of the stories that come out where you have a player who signs a contract with an agent for 150 grand up front, and then realizes, oh my God, I've just signed away 5% of my lifetime NFL earnings because I took this money up front because it seemed like a lot of money. And there are all these pitfalls. There's a story that, a player gets a use of a free car. Okay. He gets in a wreck. No one ever thought to go, oh, wait, who's insuring this car? Well, I thought the dealer was going to insure it. I thought the collective was going to insure it. You had situations where you've had players' cars repossessed because the collectives didn't pay the leasing on it because the collectives ran out of money. So all these things are in there, plus some of the corruption, some of the other things where crimes that are committed, people are pressed to look the other way and not pursue them and let the players keep playing. The power dynamics of people running collectives and the corrupting influence of a lot of that money. So it's all in this book. And the center of it is a head coach that on any given day, at any given time, can get a phone call or something where he finds out his player has announced on social media that he's leaving. The phone rings at 12:30 at night. And if it's 12:30 at night, it's usually not your academic advisor congratulating you that half your team made the dean's list. So all these things. So it shows you the mental pressures on the coach as well and how they have to deal with all that.
We obviously know, like I said earlier, your family history, your legendary father, yourself, and all that you do in keeping the history and just kind of legendary tenure of both you and your father. What motivates you as the world of college football is changing every single minute, it seems, in 2024? What motivates you and what keeps you going in this business?
Well, I think the reality is I'm very passionate about the fact that, there is massive change coming. And there really is no national leadership right now saying, where do we land this plane? How do we do this the right way? Because the reality is this revenue. Right now, the NCAA leadership, the commissioners of the conferences, the coaches, the athletic directors, presidents, and even trustees like myself at Penn State, we're constantly reacting to the latest judges ruling somewhere in this country, and you never know when it's coming. Okay, there was just another one yesterday involving the Vanderbilt quarterback who can get there's an injunction giving him an extra year, and he's not going to be penalized for playing at a JUCO. But you're constantly reacting, so events are overtaking you rather than you steering events. And I think that's one of the things I'm passionate about as a member of our board of trustees, as somebody who's consulting, and as somebody who's talking to people around the country to try and make sure this is the right way. We end this the right way. Because the reality is, look, we have to be honest about what we are right now. We are in a we're in a sports entertainment business on our campus. We're running it. The Big Ten contract was $1.1 billion for media rights. I mean, who are we kidding now? Let's be honest about what we are. So when you look at it that way, the passion is ultimately we still are dealing with young people's lives, and we want to make sure that we're giving them all the tools. We are still dealing with, we've got to be honest about, a 12-team playoff is great, but a team like Penn State to win it all is going to have to play 4 more games on top of 13 they've already played. There's injury issues there. There's concussion issues. All these things come into play. So I think this is, with all that being said, revenue sharing is coming, collective bargaining is coming, and where that money comes from, as you look at athletic departments, most of them are operating on a razor-thin margin. So now all of a sudden next year they got to come up with $22 million more. Where does that come from? I think the reality is coaches' salaries are going to have to come down. Administrator salaries are going to have to come down because players are going to start to get paid. People are talking about, of that $22 million, at most schools that I've talked to around the country, around $16.5 million of that are going to go to the football players. So, where does that $16.5 million come from? So I think there are all these challenges. So that drill is really what drives me in terms of staying involved as a trustee and a consultant, but also drove me to write this book because I really wanted people to see the cautionary tales of what's going on and what's happening in college football right now.
It's exciting when you don't know the ins and the outs, right? And you just see all this movement and all this crazy new, world and Bill Belichick joining and the college football playoff. But talking to someone like yourself, it really is an eye opener. And I give you all the respect and compliments in the world for, having your hand and brain focused on all these things. Because it's for the average fan, they don't care 2 seconds about any of this. And it's people like yourself who are continuously trying to make this a better sport, for the future. Just a few quick ones, and I'll get you out of here. And I appreciate you giving me all your time. And this is a very simple question. What has been the impact of Deion Sanders in the college football world? We know Shedeur is likely a top 5 pick, in this upcoming NFL draft. We saw Travis Hunter win the Heisman. I have a question on him as well. But just Deion Sanders himself. At first, it was Jackson State. We've seen what he's done at Colorado. There was the documentary and Coach Prime and all that. But now Colorado's taking a little bit more seriously, after this 2024 season. And it feels like maybe in the beginning, and this is just my opinion, it feels like maybe there was, let's grab some attention. But now the attention has turned into production. What are your thoughts on what Deion has done for college football?
Well, I think they took a massive step forward this year. I think they're benefiting from being the Big 12 this year, which I think is a conference where they can be very, very competitive as they were. I think that's been a real step forward for them. I think they're exciting to watch. He's got great players. I think he's put together a staff of some guys that really know the game, and I think this is going to be something that's really everybody's going to keep an eye on them as they go forward. I think he's also generated a player first mentality in terms of this program was really centered about the players and the talent. which I think is, that's where this game is right now. It's becoming a little bit like the NFL, and that the players are the ones that are really driving the things and some of their personality. So I think he's been good for the game in that regard. And I hope that, he's saying the right things about what these guys should be doing academically and that kind of stuff. And I hope that continues.
Speaking of those players, Travis Hunter, at Penn State, you guys have had generational players for decades. When you look at a guy like Travis Hunter who plays both sides of the ball, would you caution him to keep doing that in the NFL? Do you think NFL teams should be open to this? What the curious case of Travis Hunter at the next level? How do you think that plays out?
Well, I couldn't tell you. I haven't watched enough to tell you whether he's a better defensive back or a better wide receiver. He's obviously very good at both. So I think he'll get to an NFL camp and they'll say, okay, let's, that's going to be a question every team that drafts him, where are we going to play him? And that's a good problem to have, because that's a guy that you can, if you get some injuries, you can move him around. And let's say you start him a defensive back. That's a guy that can play 10, 12 plays a game at offense and give you some electricity. We've done that in the past. Derek Williams Justin King played for us and played both sides of the ball. So we've had guys do that, but not to the level Travis Hunter has. And that's been really eye-opening. I just get tired for him watching the game. So I'm like, oh my God, the guy is on, 120 something snaps. It's just unheard of, but tremendous talent, generational talent. I think he's got a great future ahead of him. He's an electric football player to watch. I'm really curious. I'm really anxious, excited to see what he does at the next level.
There's a lot of respectable names in college football, but I don't know that I could ask this question to anyone better than yourself. It used to be looked at as like college football was the feeder to the NFL. All the business aspects that we've talked about today, given everything we've talked about today, are you ready to, kind of proclaim college football is right in the business of not just feeding the NFL, but competing with the NFL moving forward?
Well, I think competing might be too strong a word, but with NIL, guys have options now. So they, a guy like Drew Allard, Penn State, if he, this isn't the case, but if his family was destitute and didn't have money, I mean, we've had guys in the past that went to the NFL maybe a year too early because their family needed the money and maybe didn't have quite the career that they could have had. But I think there is an ability to stay another year and get yourself really ready for the next level. So I don't know if it's necessarily competing with as so much as there can be more patience for some of these guys because there is the financial wherewithal to stay and provide, for their families. One of the stories that comes from a school that I've worked with, you have a kid who's, mom is trying to pay rent and has things going on and medical bills. And because of NIL, he's able to stay in and develop himself as a pro one year more and jump up 2 or 3 rounds in the draft. So I think that part of it is good.
Yeah, I think hopefully we'll see more kind of development in these players at the college level before going to the pros. Jay, you mentioned earlier that if I asked you to pick a winner, you would obviously be biased in talking about Penn State. So I'm not going to ask you to pick a winner of the college football playoff, but I'm going to ask you to highlight one. I'm going to ask you about one person on the Penn State Nittany Lions, which, by the way, I have no allegiance to any school, and there's certain schools where I'm like, this is on the dream bucket list, and a Penn State whiteout game. It's top 2, and I don't think it's 2 for me. That's one of those games where if I can make that happen in my lifetime, I'd be very happy. But when you talk about college football playoff, you did mention, hey, maybe 4 more games. But this now brings an opportunity for a spotlight on a guy like Tyler Warren. What should the world be ready for when they see Tyler Warren if they haven't seen him this year?
Well, I think everybody gets excited about the fact that he plays quarterback. He lines up here, lines up there, lines up there. And the physical talent. But I think what people underestimate is the mental talent that takes. When Michael Robinson was at Penn State, before he became the starting quarterback, I was coaching him as a quarterback, but we also used him as a receiver. We used him as a kick and punt returner. We used him as a tailback. We also did Wildcat stuff with him going back in 2005. And he had the mental acuity to handle all that and to know the blocking schemes and to read the pulling guard and make the right cut. Tyler Warren has all that stuff. And that's been the most impressive thing, is that he's a guy you can plug. It appears, I'm not in the meetings, but he's a guy that appears that when you say to him, we're going to run this play with this blocking scheme, it doesn't seem like he needs a boatload of reps to get it right. Seems like he's a guy. And when we were really, really good offensively, we had a number of guys that we could go in at halftime and say, I'm going to move you from slot receiver to the outside, move this guy here, or we're going to line you up a tailback. You know what you route you run in this play. You know where the pass protection is. And we had guys that could do that. And Tyler Warren seems to be somebody like that. And really just a hard-nosed throwback, just one of those guys, everybody talks about what kind of tight end. I tell guys when I talk about him, you compare him to Mike Allstott, who was at Purdue and went to the NFL and was just a devastating ball carrier, great receiver. I said, this guy might be that kind of running back because he in the run game. There are a number of games he's given us the biggest running plays we've had at Penn State. So really excited. I mean, if you have not seen him, and if you're a football fan and you love the game and you're a throwback, sit down and watch Penn State, get your popcorn, and do not get up from your seat when they're on offense because he is fun to watch. And look, without him, Penn State may not be here. I mean, he's been at USC at 17 catches. If he doesn't play in that game, I don't think Penn State wins that one. So, hats off. And I hate to see him go.
Yeah. So does the college football world. The college football playoffs begin this weekend. Penn State taking on SMU and a plethora of great matchups. Jay Paterno, thank you so much. Before I get out of here, one more time, Blitzed, the all-out pressure of college football's new era, available on Amazon. I know we're just a few days away from the holidays, but I'm trying to get my hands on it before Christmas is here, or maybe a few days after, because I can use a good book. And I could also use it from, your eyes, your vantage point, your words. And I think, once I get through it, I'll definitely shout it out on social media. This interview has been great. I want to thank you so much for your time. I think we covered everything in college football, but I will ask you, is there any last words, anything you want to leave?
No, just enjoy the games.
They're going to be great games. Thank you so much, sir. It was truly an honor. I appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.